This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network.
TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Hi and welcome to the next edition of the Away End. I'm today joined by Tom Parker from the Southampton podcast, In the Number. So, Tom, thank you very much for joining us to go through the upcoming game against the Saints. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and what the podcast is all about.
Really my good friend John Bailey and I have been doing it for probably about 4 or 5 years now. 4, 5, 6 maybe. And yeah, it's just we did it when we started in the Premier League, because I think even though there's tons of coverage about the Premier League, I'm sure you remember from your time when you were there, it's focused on sort of 6-7 teams, and even then, you don't, even when you're in that league, you don't get the attention. There wasn't any podcast, so we decided to start at John's place in East London on a Monday night, and we're going for a number of years now. I have a number of ex-players on, particularly interesting players from kind of that early Premier League era, when they talk about, we had players like Jason Dodd, where they come on and talk about their time and that how the game evolves, how it went from the sort of Division 1 to the Premier League and what that meant, everything in terms of foreign players coming in and kind of quality and training and diets, and really interesting. And obviously it's just a chance really to sort of analyse what's good, what's bad, and where things are going. And obviously it's a really interesting time to be a Saints fan at the moment.
Indeed, and I think Tilton Talk's very, very similar. So we've been going for 13 seasons now, but we have the old fans' favourites, shall we say, in terms of people attending, and it's great fun. In fact, we had one of your, I would say, arguably star players, who was on the coaching staff at Birmingham, who joined us on one of the shows in James
Beattie.
And what a phenomenal guy. And in fact, I've recently been in touch with him to actually come on the podcast again and come and talk us through a little bit around again what he's doing now and more about his time at Birmingham. So it's really good, and I think we, like yourselves, thoroughly enjoy it. And as fans, it's just for the fans.
Well, Beats is very well regarded. Everyone loves James Beattie. He still goes to Saints away games. I mean, people love James Beattie, and rightly so.
I reckon he'll be there tomorrow, it'd be good to, if he is, give him a bit of a round of applause, because he deserves it for all the work that he did. And in fact, I think you're one of your strikers in Che Adams at the moment. When he was at Birmingham, he brought the best out of him. He actually, he turned around Che Adams from being a fringe player to a 20-goal a season plus player, and still to this day haven't had, for me, since he left, the opportunity to have a strike force doing exactly the same thing. So it's I'm looking forward to welcoming him. I'm looking forward to welcoming Che. I don't want him to score, I want him to have the worst game of the season, as I did say about Bellingham when Sunderland came, actually, and he did. So I hope that's the case for Che as well. But we'll come on to the game shortly. But so Birmingham, Southampton, go back a fair few years really since we've had games together, apart from the one this season. And so I went back past 5, and we've actually had 2 wins each and a draw. The last result, obviously, was your 3-1 win down at St Mary's earlier in this season. For me, arguably, and the league position doesn't lie, one of the best teams in the league at the moment from a footballing perspective. But I think fair to say you're in a little bit of not a full downward spiral, but your form has dropped away slightly, dropping down the league. Other teams just continue to win. We mentioned just before this that Leeds, Leicester should arguably win the league, but Leeds are flying at the moment. But going into the season, obviously expectations must have been high. You kept the nucleus of a Premier League side. You brought in some additional faces, and you have looked very, very strong after what was a little bit of a ropey start. So what was your thoughts initially, and now what are your expectations?
It was a strange start to the season. As you say, some good players kept, but a lot of big players left as well. Yeah, obviously, like James Ward-Prowse, probably the standout member of that team. But as you said, we kept a lot of very good players. I mean, we can talk about the players that have been good this season. Players like Carl Walker-Peters, players like that, Stuart Armstrong, very, very good players. Good Premier League players, but at this level, exceptionally good, I think. But it was a bit of a rocky start, and after 4 games, we then lost 4 on the bounce. I think the low point was 5-0 away at Sunderland, absolutely hammered. So I think after 8 games, people were concerned, and I think part of that was obviously Russell Martin had come in. He's one of those managers that people within football, they talk very highly about people, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've ever won anything or even done anything that illustrious. He'd had some good finishes with MK Dons. He'd done well with a not particularly great and underinvested in Swansea team, but he wasn't a manager that had ever necessarily won anything. And but very few managers have, really, if you look at it. And I think, also there's complete change in styles because Russell Martin teams and, they like to keep the ball and they like to pass people to death. And we'd gone from having, apart from the awful Nathan Jones era and the Ruben Sellers era, which we don't talk about, the sort of the crux of the last 4 or 5 years before that had been Ralph Hasenhüttl, which was heavy kind of pressing football, almost better without the ball. We wait to spring a trap and, we didn't have the ball a lot. We were, as I say, we were almost more effective forcing other teams to try and play. So we complete change in style, and it's fair to say there was a wobble. And I think as well that was all compounded by the fact we had owners come in last season, new owners who promised a great deal, but ultimately had really screwed up their running of the football club. With the departure of Hasenhüttl, the appointment of Nathan Jones, who's now managing, despite saying he's the best coach in Europe, he's managing at Charlton, and Ruben Sellers, who's now the Reading manager, and obviously we fell out of the Premier League like a stone and we deserve to get relegated. We're probably one of the worst teams last season to play in the Premier League for a number of years. And it's a rebuild. But I think, if you look now after that 8 games, things weren't looking great, but we had a great run. We had, I think, 25 games unbeaten, 23, I think, of which were in the Championship. And I think Russell Martin has stamped a real identity on the club.
It was an unreal run that you went on.
It really was.
Everybody was talking about it. You seemed unbeatable. And there were times when I thought to myself, yourself and Leicester were arguably going to run away with the league and the second spot. Things, as always, don't always go to plan, and obviously teams around yourselves then continue to pick up results. I still think, for me, that you are the stronger of the 3 outside of Leicester.
Yes,
and I think there's still for me that's distinct possibility. In fact, the 3 teams relegated from the Premier League last season will all go back up, which, when you go back over the seasons that have gone by, it's not many times that that's actually occurred. So it will be interesting, but then also comes down to the fact if like you say, the nucleus of your team remained. I mean, best possible scenario, you get yourselves promoted into the Premier League. Be awesome. First bounce back and everything else. I remember Birmingham doing it after they were relegated for the first time, and it does give that feel good factor, and actually keeping your team together helps it go forwards. What's worst case for Southampton?
I think, well, look, firstly, like, if we go up, it's great. But I mean, we played Liverpool. We played Liverpool's reserve team, their kids, on Wednesday night, and lost 3-0. So, like, the delta, the gap between the Championship and the Premier League is so great. I think, and I think the fact that 3 teams that went down may well go up, I think, just shows that. I think that the gap now is widening. It's wider than it's ever been, and I loved it. I'm really enjoying being in the Championship, and I think a lot of Saints fans will. And I don't think they really miss the Premier League. I think the worst case scenario is we don't go up. I think I've got a horrible feeling Leeds now are just on this unstoppable run. We've obviously had a wobble. I think we've lost 3 of our last 4 kind of games in the league, including a very, very poor abject, uninspiring performance against Millwall at the weekend. You know, like you can lose against Hull City. Hull City are actually a really good team, probably better than their league position. Bristol, Bristol had a great game against us, but we can't be losing it. You know, Millwall at home is where you got to win, and you can bet everything that like Leeds and Leicester, they won't lose to Millwall at home. But I think the worst that happens is we go into that playoffs, and I think it's a lottery then, isn't it? I do genuinely believe that if we go into the playoffs and Leeds and Leicester go up, I do think we'll go through. I think we've got a better team, but it is a lottery. Anything can happen on the day. Of freak goal, freak gust of wind, a silly red card, and your season is worth nothing. And I think if we don't go up, the problem is we've got some really strong players in this team. Walker Peters, arguably our best player of the season.
Yeah.
Harwood Bellis, the young centre back from Burnley. From Man City, who was on loan at Burnley last season. Shay Adams, obviously a player both clubs know well. Stuart Armstrong. There's a lot of players there that I think, Gavin Bazunu, the goalkeeper, I think a lot of Premier League teams would probably go, even like Jan Bednarek, a Polish international centre-back, 50-odd caps. He's not going to stay at Saints. He's not going to play another season in the Championship. Yeah. So I think part of the issue is, we don't go up. We get the core ripped out of the team. And one of the reasons why it's great to be a Saints fan at the moment, apart from the last few results, is the football. The quality of the football is fantastic. But that is because of the quality of the players. And it's not coaching, but it's quality of players can implement it. We lose the nucleus of that team, where it's just not going to be as good. So I think the big fear is not to go up. Jurgen Klopp said we were kind of a Premier League team in all but name, which was a very kind thing to say in the programme for Wednesday night, but ultimately it doesn't mean anything. It's just
I watched the game,
words.
And the one thing that stood out for me was that the first 20, 25 minutes, you completely outplayed them. And then it was, I don't know, it's just like a turning point, just one single point in that. And then the kids just started the passing around, keeping control, and that's that's the difference for me between the Premier League and the Championship. Is they're 100%. Able to just click of a finger turn a complete game on its head, and you shouldn't knock yourself because you mentioned there you're losing 3-0 to a second string Liverpool side, but I look at some of them kids that are in that side and they were playing in the Worthington Cup, and they were playing in the cup the weekend in the final. So they are far from, players that are just there for the sake of turning out. They are pushing for that Premier League spot. And actually, I think there'll be a few of them that will hit the bench before the season's out. And also, they're playing for Jurgen Klopp. I mean, that's this season for Liverpool. For
Destiny.
Me. Yeah. You know what I mean? If there's any time that they're going to take three titles, it's going to be this season because of the fact that it's disappearing with Klopp. So I can see it happening. So, I mean, look, you turned out, and then I've got to say, when I watched that game, I was scared because I look at the Birmingham side and I think, if you turn up on Saturday and you perform the way that you did in that first 20 minutes, then, I've been open and honest as a Birmingham fan, we haven't got a cat in our chance. And it's as simple as that.
That was a kind of a second string Saints team. I would say there's a lot of players there that won't start on Saturday, partly because I think Russell Martin really needs a result on Saturday. It's almost like we've had a real wobble, and it's fine. We can have a wobble if everyone else does, but the others aren't. Even Ipswich have picked up now from their. They've
had their wobble. They went through.
Yeah, they've done it now, and they're still third. So that's not a bad place to be. So, but no, I think we've argued about some very, very good players, but to your point, it's about finishing, isn't it? It's about that difference between Premier League and Championship, and one of the players that we've got shared history is obviously Shay Adams. And I think Shay Adams is a great example of this difference of Shay Adams was by all accounts a monster in the chat. For a couple of seasons in the Championship, 2 or 3 seasons, he just bossed it and bullied everyone and scored constantly. And you look in Premier League, he's never quite set it alight. And I mean, he's still contributed really well. And I think, but he's the difference. And I think one of the things you've seen this season, I've watched more Championship this year than I've done in a long time, is that difference in finishing. You get away with things in the Championship both from forwards missing things and defenders kind of making mistakes that don't seem to happen as much in the Premier League. And I think, Shay Adams is a great example of a really hard-working footballer. Championship, he's probably a 20 goals a season player if he plays week in, week out. Premier League is probably an 8-goal a season man. And that's a big difference. But I think that's the difference you're looking at now is the ruthlessness of it. And Saints, played a good first 30 minutes, maybe a good 40 minutes against Liverpool, but we didn't score. We hit the post, we didn't score, and then that's it. Just the quality tells in the end.
I mean, you mentioned there Shay Adams, and we always go through as part of the Away End podcast is looking at players of old. And when I started looking from a Birmingham to Southampton point of view, it actually was quite hard because there hasn't been this huge overlap like you see in some of the other teams. But, to name some of the players that we've had at both clubs, so Che Adams, we've obviously mentioned. He came when he left Birmingham, top goal scorer, had a phenomenal partnership with Lucas Jukovic, who's still at Birmingham. And also, tedious link, but he played his youth football at Southampton. We've got players like Nathan Redmond, who again left us at a young age, but went on to do fantastic things at Southampton. Jeff Kenner, Chris Marsden. I'll never forget Chris Marsden at Birmingham because he was a midfield playmaker that nobody liked coming up against because he just had an RE football and he knocked it about. He's also never afraid to put his foot in, which Birmingham fans absolutely.
He's a big cult hero at Saints, Chris Marsden. He scored a goal against Ipswich where he sort of accidentally dribbled around the whole Ipswich defence and then sort of embarrassingly put it behind the goal. But yeah, people love Chris Marsden. Obviously, he was part of the team that we took to the FA Cup final back in, I think, 2001. So people love Chris Marsden.
And we got, other players like Kevin Phillips, Kevin Miller. So goalkeeping overlaps there as well.
Yeah.
Jan Valery, who we had on loan from yourselves a couple of seasons ago. Sam Gallagher didn't really do too much at Birmingham, unfortunately, when he came to us on loan.
No, it sounds.
But the one really for me that stands out a mile, purely because defender when I played myself, and he was just such a hard knock, never say die attitude player was Raddy JD. And he's a friend of Tilton Talk. We've actually had him on and done an interview with him, and he was phenomenal. Such a nice guy, and did a lot for both clubs. But also we got the link in James Beattie. Obviously, he was part of the coaching staff at Birmingham. He is he under 18 coach at Southampton now?
I think he was, and I think he's been involved with the strikers. I think like he was at Birmingham. But Beats is people scored a lot of goals for Saints and was a really good player. Sort of came as part of the not part of came as part of a deal, sort of a bit of a make weight. And I don't think he was very young at the time. But great career, great goal scorer, got England caps, scored some really good goals, and he's still. You still see him at away games in the Saints end. He's there, and people have a lot of affection for him because I think he always looked like he was having fun.
Yeah,
and I think footballers now they're all so serious, all quite po-faced, aren't they? They're all got their game face on. Where Beattie looked like he was kicking the ball around the park with his mates. He was great.
When he was at Birmingham as the coach, I mean, Che Adams for me, we got the best out of Che Adams because of James Beattie. It was when he came into the club, and albeit only for a short period of time, which is disappointing from every Birmingham point of view. But when he was there, he basically taught Che to be a striker and not to be this person that could run in off the wing, put a ball in for somebody else to go and score. But actually, how could he feed off the players around him? And his partnership with Jukovic, and I go back over the past probably 10 seasons, that partnership is the best that I have seen because they just gelled. You're a person to win a ball in the air, somebody working from behind. They played off each other. They were scoring goals for fun in the league. That's what earned him his move. And I think, in all honesty, had the bid have come in during the transfer window in the January, I think he'd have moved. But purely because the bid wasn't high enough, he didn't move until the summer. That actually arguably got us into trouble for financial fair play. But it was the best thing we did. because I think we near enough doubles the offer that was being made in the original stance. So he's a great player for yourself. I said this about Joe Bellingham.
Yeah, he's an important player.
I want him to come to St Andrews, and when I hear his name, he'll get a round of applause. But I want him to have his worst game of his career when he's turning out on that pitch. I want him to hit every ball and it goes over as though we're playing rugby in St Andrews rather than football. But I do wish him, every luck and everything else. And I really do want to see him getting promoted with the Saints.
So he's an interesting player. I mean, he's a good player. I think to your point about as part of a two, we play him up front, not by himself, but with two wingers alongside him. And he's at his best. I mean, for us, he was at his best when he was with Danny Ings. I mean, Danny Ings is a great footballer, but he did the kind of unselfish, unglamorous, chesting the ball down, holding it up. Yeah. Great passing the ball. Like he still does it for now. He can put a pass with the eye of a needle, and I almost think he's better as part of a two. But yeah, he's not a great run of form at the moment, so you might be lucky.
Well, we're going to have to continue. So we're going to and talking about the game at St Andrews on Saturday. I mean, first of all, first time we've played each other there for a fair few years. It's Birmingham need to get a result. We're in arguably a relegation fight. Everybody keeps on saying we're too good to go down, but to me, there is no such thing. We have to be honest and say that if you're in and around that mix, you're in a fight. So we're going to be battling hard to obviously continue the run of form that we've had in the league, and we want to bounce back in terms of getting a decent result after a very poor performance really down at Ipswich last week. Yourselves, you're coming in with this. I suppose it is a poor run, really, in comparison to the rest of the season.
3 losses in 4. 3 losses in 4. It's a bad run.
And you're going to want those points to be, pushing continually for that second spot and keeping the pressure ultimately on Ipswich and Leeds. So what do you expect? Who should we watch out for? And I suppose I don't want to say an exclusive because I think it's already out there, but I am hearing that Walker Peters is injured. Is that right? He went out of the game.
He went off on. I don't know if he's. I've not seen if he's actually out. But he went off injured on Wednesday night, and he doesn't go off injured. He's not. He's a real pro. So no, I think, and that's a big blow for us. He is probably our single most important player in terms of his ability on the ball, his ability to get the ball up the pitch, offer both a kind of attacking threat and a brilliant defensive player. So the big blow for us. James Bree will come in, who is a very good championship player, was I think a championship team of the year for Luton a couple of seasons back. He'll be a good player, but he's not Walker Peters. Walker Peters, if to my mind, could if not play for, then certainly warm the bench of top 6 Premier League team.
He demolished us when we played you in your place. He absolutely demolished us. Ran us.
He's something else. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the guy is. It's just the younger football fans call him a cheat code, which I kind of hate. But he is at that level. He's Premier League. He's a very good Premier League player playing at the Championship. I think this weekend. I think it depends. Russell Martin has lost his. He seems to be making changes that are unforced errors, and they're causing the team to be weaker. And whether he's starting to doubt himself, maybe an element of crisis of confidence, a little bit, maybe a bit strong, but. For example, the game at the weekend, he shoehorned Jack Stevens in, who's our club captain, but we've got 2 very good centre-backs. He didn't need to bring another centre-back. It basically meant everyone played out of position and it weakened the team. And I think hopefully what Russell Martin will do is he will reflect upon the last results and will go back to basics almost and put out the right players in the right position. Because I do think that and I can't, we've lost Ryan Fraser, which is a big loss. He's going to be out until after the international break. But, we're blessed with talent on the wings. And I think from memory of the game at St Mary's, that was where we kind of tore you to shreds was on the wings. I mean, like you couldn't get near us in terms of both the fullbacks and the wingers we put out. So I hope, Russell Martin goes back to basics, plays the best players in the best positions, because I think we've got more than enough talent to get a win. I think we need a win to arrest this slide and just to put level pegging again, because we're only 2 points out. It seems like I think it seems like a lot far away, but I think we're 2 points out, or maybe it's a bit more, maybe it's 5 now. But I think it's about going back to what we were doing before as part of that run, playing the best players, playing Shay Adams, playing Adam Armstrong, not fanning around, for like replacements. And I'd say if you're looking out for players, I think wingers without Fraser, Sam Adozie will probably likely start. An electric player, incredible winger. He's only like 21, 22, got from Man City, but goes past players like they're not even there. Yeah. But in terms of like a real, I think the player to watch is always Stuart Armstrong for us. He's kind of the player that makes everything tick. A real elegant footballer, a real Rolls Royce footballer.
I like him a lot. I like him a lot.
Can do special things with the football, and I would say so Stuart Armstrong is the one to watch. But then I would also say, in a very unglamorous, boring way, but the most important player for all of us is Downs, the sort of defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
We got from West Ham. Our run of poor results has coincided with him. Since he's been off the pitch, we've conceded goals non-stop because our other midfielders, Smallbone, Armstrong, Joe Rothwell, they're not big at tracking back. And the way we play is it's a high win, high reward, but big risk, where we can lose the ball and be broken on. And what Downs does is he gives you that extra layer of cover, the ball, that water carrier role, which was, which people think is unglamorous, but it's so vital for a team that plays the way we do. And I think if he's back, it will give the whole team a lift. And we need that because it'll be a tough game on Saturday.
It will. I mean, we've got better in terms of the wing play that you mentioned. You did tell us. Yeah. We have got Ethan Laird back and Dramar's playing as well really well at the moment in terms of our wing backs, and actually we've got a lot of attacking ability seems to have come in since Tony Mowbray has joined us as manager as well. And I know he's out of the game this weekend, be head up again by Mark Venus, and this will be the first time at St Andrews that he hasn't been there since he's had to take his leave of absence. But we'll hopefully be looking to get the 3 points and give him the the geo that we know he doesn't need it, but it's that extra boost. So prediction wise, I will always say I always love to see Birmingham get a result, but I do think it's going to be tough. There's going to be goals in the game either way, because I think we'll both come and both be attacking. I can see it coming, so I think there's going to be goals in the game. I'm actually going to go for myself for a 1-1. I think we can. I can't see us scoring more than one, unfortunately, and I think we're going to have to defend like hell to keep you out. But then I also don't think that we won't concede. So yeah, I'm going to go for the 1-1 at St Andrews.
I think it's probably a fair result. I would say it's probably a fair one. I think we're a bit of a wobble. I think it depends. If we turn up and we do what we do, we could win 2-3-0. But I think 1-0 is not unlikely. So look, I would say my heart says I would say 2-0 Saints win, but my head says probably a 1-0.
It's probably actually. Do you know what? I'd echo that as always. Well, I mean, thank you very much for sparing us.
No, thank you.
Through the game, it's going to be a good one as always. And look, after tomorrow, I wish the Saints every luck under the sun, and I hope you do get promoted back to the Premier League, where ultimately you deserve to be. You're a big club, and you don't want to loiter around in the Championship too much longer. So, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And